Welcome to a new video and a new camera comparison. This time the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra versus the Vivo X100 Ultra. So let's get started. On this sunny day here in Wesel, we are checking out those two bad boys. As you can see here, triple lens setup on both, even though we have a ring setup on the Vivo with a special 200 megapixel telezoom, very large sensor 101.4, and we have the 1-inch type sensor on both, but we have the older variant on the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra, though it has this cool possibility to have the lens extract, and we have a relatively large aperture on the telezoom here, which is 3.5 times telezoom. And then we have an ultra wide angle as well as some nice front-facing video shooters here and photo shooters as well, selfie cameras there. So let's start with those. And this is the Vivo X100 Pro Ultra, actually not Pro, X100 Ultra, and this one has 4K 30, 4K 60 frames per second recording here on the front-facing camera, and this front-facing camera even features autofocus, which is also quite cool. And this is the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra front-facing camera. It also has 4K 30 and 4K 60 frames per second, also features autofocus, but has also the possibility to zoom out to wide, as you see, zoom into 1x and 0.8x, which is a bit wider than what we saw on the Vivo X100 Ultra, I think. How's HDR, colors and sound, because we are using the internal mics here on this one. The Vivo X100 Ultra can record 4K 30, 4K 60, 8K 30 even, and this is the main camera sensor that you see right now, 4K 30, and of course during 4K recording I can switch to the ultra wide angle. So let me do this just by switching here to the ultra wide angle. So what do you think about this one here in terms of color stabilization and audio, because I'm using the internal mics here and it might be a bit windy, so how well does it handle wind noises and surrounding noises and so on. So what do you think about this one here? And let me try to zoom in on something. So let me try to zoom in on a little statue there in the background. So we do this 3.7 times there, and then we can go up to 10 times, and if I want to I can go also to 20 times, and look how sharp this looks like. Very impressive on the Vivo X100 Ultra. Let's go back to 1x, and yeah, this is how smooth it zooms in and out. Now recording 4K 30 frames per second with the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra. This one can record up to 4K 60 frames per second only, but it offers also the possibility of switching to the ultra wide angle during recording of 4K. So let's do this right now. And what you will notice is that this one probably has a bit of a better audio filter when it comes to noises and wind. This is the ultra wide angle. What do you think about this one here? 4K 30 frames per second recording. The ultra wide angle can also do 4K 60 frames per second like all the lenses here. So what do you think about this one here? And of course we want to perform a little zoom test here on the Pura 70 Ultra. So let's stop here and let's do a little zoom test there. So I can switch directly to 4x, and then I can also go to 10x and to 15x. As you can see, it's not as sharp and clear as on the Vivo X100 Ultra. One thing that I have to show and have to talk about is cinematic portrait mode on the Vivo X100 Ultra. Otherwise the Vivo fans will crucify me. Cinematic portrait allows you to get better video quality because you can tweak the colors to your liking. It is limited, however, to 4K 30 max, but you have the possibility to choose either a predefined LUT and can tweak it. Like for example, I have now the classic LUT set up here to 50%, so it gives me not so much contrast that I don't like so much. But it gives me different colors for sure, more natural colors, and I like this profile much more than the default video profile. Sometimes it has some HDR problems here and there, but I think this one is working fine. And the cool thing is here, you can even apply your own LUT. If you have your own LUT, you can just put it into the camera app on the phone itself, and then play to your heart's content with the color profile that you like to use here on this one. And the cool thing is, in cinematic portrait I have the possibility to zoom in and out. No, not during recording, but I have the possibility otherwise to switch to the telelens as well. Sadly not the ultra wide angle, that is not possible, but the main camera, especially if you want to use it for vlogging, is already pretty cool. What do you think about this one here? And now I'm recording with the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra, and this one also has a specialty. You might be able to see it already. It has a variable aperture, so I have set it to f1.6, which is a little bit larger than what we have on the Vivo X100 Ultra that has f1.8. So the opening is larger, it lets in a bit more light, so for darker scenarios it might be a little bit better, but also you get a nicer background blur, and you have also the control in the Pro mode, of course, to choose your white balance. I have a fixed white balance right now, and the colors by default are with the X100 original way more natural. By setting up a fixed white balance, it helps as well with the performance here. The cool thing is in Pro mode I have of course the possibility to also switch between all lenses, so this is working here, and I can go to the ultra wide angle. Of course the ultra wide angle doesn't have this wide aperture there, but at least you have the possibility to do so. The ultra wide angle is the weakest sensor on the Pura 70 Ultra, and I really hope that they will upgrade this at one point, maybe again with a very large cine kind of sensor. But what do you think about the Pura 70 Ultra? Let me switch back to the 1X sensor so we can compare it to the cinematic portrait on the Vivo X100 Ultra. Which one do you prefer in terms of videography? And now a small test also showing you that of course it has a pro video mode, the Vivo X100 Ultra, that allows you to set the white balance to 5400 Kelvin, for example, which I have set right now. So your face color won't be too warm and you won't have the yellow face issue that we encountered in videos before. So we have the possibility to do so, but I think the sharpness is still a bit too high here, even in pro video mode. What do you think about this? I didn't see a possibility to make it a bit softer here and there, which we have in the photo Pro mode for sure. But what do you think nevertheless here of also the audio quality using the internal mics and the video, just that you can bring it on par with the Huawei when it comes to the Pro mode and white balance and face color issues that you encountered before? Here we can see the front-facing video of the Vivo X100 Ultra and the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra. What we can see, despite having a different kind of street that I was walking in here, we have much more punchy colors on the Vivo X100 Ultra. Both struggle a little bit with the overexposure there in the sky. Over punchy colors on the Vivo, look at the green there, compare it with the green here on the Huawei. So yes, the Huawei has much more natural colors. When it comes to sharpness and detail levels, you can see the Vivo has a very, very sharpened up face. I think even a little bit over sharpened there. I don't like this look too much, I have to say, because it's a bit too sharp there. The Huawei has a bit of a yellowish kind of face, and if I go a bit further you will see that it's a bit of a soft face. Even though we have autofocus there, the whole frame is a bit softer. This has something to do probably with the more ultra wide angle that we have. So we have more flexibility definitely on the Huawei, because we have the possibility to go to this ultra wide angle, which is quite nice, and then the image becomes a bit sharper, but it's not as sharp as the Vivo. So yes, we have a softer look that has a bit more natural colors, at least in the background. The face is a bit like the HDR, I think maybe a bit too much there, where the Vivo I think a bit too over sharpened, and the colors in the background a bit too punchy. Face color I think is okay, maybe a bit too reddish there, the face. And what do you think about the front facing cameras here? I would give it to the Huawei actually, because I think the Huawei has a bit more features and a bit more pleasant colors, even though the face is a bit more warmish and yellowish there. When it comes to the main camera sensors, it is a battle between yellow on the Vivo and red on the Huawei in terms of face colors. You can see that the Vivo is like having this over sharpened kind of look as well, but making the face a lot more yellow, where the Huawei has it a bit more reddish there. The Vivo has the bit more punchy colors, so if I go a bit forward you can see that we have much more bluish kind of sky there. And when I go with the Pura 70 Ultra you will see that it's a bit more warmish kind of sky, not so blue as the Vivo. Taking a look at the sharpness detail, you can see that the Vivo X100 Ultra has a much sharper face there than the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra. I prefer the not so sharpened up look on the Huawei actually, because I think the Vivo looks a bit too smartphone look-alike, a bit too sharp even, and I think it's not natural sharpness, it's a bit artificial sharpening that is all over my face there, as you see, where the Huawei keeps it a little bit more soft there, which I prefer honestly. But it's a matter of preference here, which you like better, a bit more reddish look, a bit more yellowish look. I think the Vivo X100 Ultra is a more pleasant look all over the place when it comes to the face color, because a bit more yellowish is okay, but a bit too reddish, it's a bit hard to deal with. When it comes to the ultra wide angle, what we can see here is a bit more warmish kind of colors already here. And let's go in here, way bluer on the Vivo X100 Ultra, but I think it corrects itself a bit. But you can see how more dramatic the sky looks with this blue punchy colors. And the Huawei Pura has a bit of an underexposure issue there, where the Vivo X100 Ultra keeps it real, but you can see like it's much softer than the main camera sensor, and this is one of the weakest sensors on the Vivo. It's the ultra wide angle. But not only the Vivo, the Huawei also suffers from this, and this is even worse because I think it's very soft, especially towards the edges, and HDR or something is wrong. Maybe it's even like focusing on the background, but my face looks weird really with the colors there. If I walk into the shadows there, you can see it tries to lift stuff up on my face, but I look like it looks like painted, that my face is painted. So Huawei is doing a terrible job there. What about the Vivo X100 Ultra? When I walk there into the dark, you can see it's overexposing the background to lift up the colors of my face. I think it's doing much better job here, even though I think the Huawei might have the better ultra wide angle. But yeah, and both have the weakest lens there, the ultra wide angle. But in video mode, even like you can see how much punchy the colors there, the greens are, where the Huawei keeps it more real there with the greens. But my face looks terrible, so I would prefer the Huawei for the background, and I think I would prefer the Vivo for the foreground. But yeah, overall, I think the Vivo is the winner here because the Huawei messes up my face too much. But what do you say about this one here? Also HDR, I can see like it's overexposing because it's like getting my face up there, where the Huawei probably with the ultra wide angle has better HDR. And yeah, which one is the winner for you? Hard to tell, is it? And when we zoom in, I think the winner is clear. Let me get a clear shot here. And here as well, you can see that the Vivo has a bit of a sharper look, again a bit more yellowish kind of look, a bit sharpened up look for sure. A bit more natural colors on the Huawei for sure. You can see here the sharpness of the Vivo, and here you can see the quite softness of the Huawei. I think maybe it's even focusing on the tree in the foreground. Then we can zoom in and compare it with the zoom in shot of the Vivo. There's no competition here. Look how much more detailed the Vivo is in comparison to the Huawei. Even if we go and move a little bit, you can see, yeah, it's get a bit sharper there, but it's artificial looking, where the Vivo which looks much more natural there with the sharpness. And yeah, it can get very close there. Keep in mind the Huawei has 27mm by default, so coming a bit closer there with 18 times zoom or something like this, and 20 times zoom here is getting us very close. You can see the optics also struggling a bit on the Vivo there if the maximum zoom is hit. But yeah, it's a clear win here when it comes to the zoom shots for the Vivo. So overall, which one did a better job there? I think I have to give it to the Vivo there. Stabilization, both are fine. Maybe the Huawei a tad better there, but we will have to check the night video for this, because I think the sensor shift stabilization helps, especially in night videos. But the Vivo has like this, yeah, a little bit less kind of EIS applied in night video to compensate the jitter that you usually have. So yeah, overall, in terms of video, I'm surprised that the Vivo has this too much punchy of colors, but the Huawei is not perfect either here, with HDR problems, red face issues still, even though if you have HDR enabled, then it's helping a little bit, but it is still something that you see. And like I said in the beginning, it is yellow face on the Vivo versus red face on the Huawei. I really would like the Huawei correct the face colors, because I think the natural colors that you see in the background are quite okay. So another video comparison with the Vivo X100 Ultra using the cinematic portrait mode and the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra, that is using its Pro mode. It doesn't have a cinematic portrait mode, but using its Pro mode. I just wanted to see how the larger aperture is doing here. Do we see much of a difference there? And the cool thing is, if you're using Pro mode on the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra, I think you can get rid of this too reddish kind of face just by setting the white balance manually. So don't set the auto white balance. As you can see here, I think my face color is looking nice, like it should be. What we can also see is a very nice background blur, in the background and the foreground being a bit sharper, maybe even than the video mode, which is quite interesting with the aperture wide open. The Vivo X100 Ultra looks a bit softer in cinematic portrait mode, especially with the classic LUT, which I like. But what I don't like is the face color. Look at this very, very yellowish kind of face color. If we move a bit around, you will see that, yeah, I think still the Huawei looks now better than the Vivo, even though I like now the more softer look on the Vivo X100 Ultra. But the face color is just simply wrong, and you can just see that the punchiness of the colors there in the background, like for example the house there and the bricks there, is also much more pronounced still on the Vivo X100 Ultra with the classic LUT. Maybe you have to get another LUT that helps with this. And all the other thing is, like, of course, set auto white balance to off and set your own white balance in Pro mode, but then you're losing the possibility to have this cinematic kind of look. Not only the bokeh, but also like the other colors there that you can set up on the Vivo X100 Ultra, which is a bit of a bummer there. But otherwise, I think the Vivo X100 Ultra is in video mode, if you want to have the colors right. The Pro mode is the only true that will work here for you. I think when I was testing the X100 Pro, I could get away with the cinematic portrait mode as an alternative, as a quick setup. But I think the Huawei also, Pura 70 Ultra, if you want to film yourself, just go into Pro mode, set a manual white balance to have the white balance corrected on your face, which is something that both are not as good in doing. And when it comes to the bokeh, this is the bokeh on the cinematic portrait mode. It's a natural bokeh. I didn't tweak or turn off and turn on any bokeh that you can see here on the Vivo X100 Ultra, and on the Pura 70 Ultra we have this here. It's a bit over sharpened on my face there for sure, so I think the Pura looks a bit better there, but in terms of bokeh I don't see much of a difference. So the advantage that we have in terms of aperture, variable aperture on the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra doesn't come through when it comes to the bokeh here so much. I like the more cinematic styling that we have here on the Pura 70 Ultra, but the colors are a bit too much for me. And yeah, maybe manual LUTs will help there. If you have some LUTs that you want to share, and you can share it down in the comments section for the Vivo X100 Ultra, I'm gladly trying this out. I want something that is a bit more natural looking, more into terms colors, what the Huawei is doing here, but with less sharpening as we see it here on the Huawei. So what is your opinion? Which one is the clear winner here in terms of video? The Vivo X100 Ultra or the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra? I have to say, in terms of colors, the Huawei is definitely the winner. In terms of flexibility and possibilities and tweakabilities, the Vivo X100 Ultra is definitely the winner, but they really have to work on the default video mode because the colors are just not good. And also with the cinematic portrait mode, I think they're overdoing it also there with the yellow face. I don't know what's going on there. And Huawei, of course, has to work on the reddish kind of face that they still have on their video. What do you think about both of them? Which one deserves the higher video score? On the left we have the Vivo, on the right we have the Huawei. We start off with the telesensor, 3.7x zoom on the Vivo X100 Ultra. Huawei has 3.5 times zoom, but because Huawei is going from 27mm 1x to 3.5 times, it's 95mm here on the Huawei. So we have a bit more reach, where the Vivo starts from 23x as 1x, so 3.7x is 85mm. So this is a native zoom. Just to check out, the Vivo of course is the the larger image sensor and has a little bit smaller f-stop number, so smaller opening, smaller aperture f2.7, where the Huawei has f 2.1. What we see here is a color difference. We have warmer colors on the Huawei, we have a bit cooler colors on the Vivo. You can see it clearly in the sky there, and also I think a bit more contrasty look, especially look in the sky. The HDR, both are very fine, but in terms of contrast, I think the Vivo is adding a little bit more. The Vivo has a much larger sensor. This is why the foreground here, for example, is already out of focus, where the Huawei has it still in focus. Though the Huawei has some issues there also, I think it is like adding a bit of detail level there. You can see that here on this side, it is like also not seeing those lines that are visible on those signs there. When we take a look at the rest of the photo, you can see that both are very sharp and detailed. The Huawei is raising up the shadows a little bit. This is why on the platform here you can clearly see those holding whatever that is, holding stems or holding things here that you barely see on the Vivo for sure. Otherwise, in terms of detail level, both are on par there, so this is quite surprising for me. The Huawei seems to be a bit more sharpening things up there. The Vivo a bit more natural there. The Vivo was shot in the natural colors, and the Huawei was shot in its Huawei or Xmage original or Xmage natural or whatever they call it, the default one as well. When we take a look at further zoom shots, this is 10 times zoom. Again, warmer colors on the Huawei with a bit more raised shadows, cooler colors on the Vivo with a bit more contrasty look. The Vivo looks more natural already. You can see that the Huawei is a bit struggling here, not so much. When I go to the middle here of the picture, you can see that the Vivo appears to have more details, looks a bit more natural, also with the details where the Huawei is already like painting in some things and looks a little bit artificial and processed. When we zoom in even further, this is 30 times. The Vivo looks like a photograph. The Huawei looks like really digitally zoomed in, and when we go to 100%, you can clearly see it's a modern piece of art on the Huawei, and it is passable, I would say, on the Vivo X100 Ultra. So lots of more details there on the larger sensor. That helps, of course, with preserving those details in further zoomed in shots. Otherwise, in terms of colors, you don't notice much of a difference. Maybe a bit of more punchy colors here on the Huawei. When we go in for the first 1x zoom, the IMX989 versus the LIT 900, what we can see here, so this is the Huawei with the IMX989, 1-inch type sensors. What we can see here is the dramatic difference in the back there. You can see how much brightened up, maybe even overexposed the Huawei looks like. Why is that the case? Because I think the Huawei was like exposing on this face of this donkey, where the Vivo X100 Ultra was like not. This is one thing, but the other thing is like the Huawei has a warmer kind of tone which fits the day a bit more, where the Vivo for some reason has everything a bit too darkish blue there, which appears to be like the thunderstorm or rain clouds are coming, which was not the case on this day. Otherwise, I think the building's color is not as red as the Vivo X100 Ultra makes it to be, but it's definitely not as yellow as the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra makes it to be. If you want to edit the pictures, then I would stick to the Vivo X100 Ultra, because I could change this and brighten it and getting a little bit less contrast and brightening up the shadows a little bit more on the Vivo, where white balance changes may be a bit more difficult on the Huawei. Otherwise, detail levels are basically the same. Huawei a bit cropped in, like I said, 27 millimeters that they use by default, where the Vivo uses 23. And we can also see that in terms of sharpening, I think the Huawei is doing a little bit more there as well. Look at the background there. It appears to be a little bit sharper on the Huawei than on the Vivo. The Vivo a bit more natural looking for sure. When we go to the ultra wide angle, I'm quite surprised to see that the Huawei is using a wider angle of view. So we have 13 millimeters here, where the Vivo has 14 millimeters. The Vivo still has like this bit too darkish blue here, would make it look like rain clouds are coming, where the Huawei has a bit more this brighter blue here, warmish kind of colors for sure. Both having, I think, the ultra wide angle as the weakest sensor on the back, and both are doing a fine job otherwise, but the Huawei is sharper, less punchy with the yellow, which is quite interesting because I was using Zeiss natural colors, and you can see that the sharpening algorithm on the Vivo tries to sharpening up the bricks and of course the roof, but it doesn't quite get it, where the Huawei is also sharpening things up for sure, but because the rest looks sharp or sharper than on the Vivo, it looks more consistent on the Huawei for sure. Don't get me wrong, it's also consistent on the Vivo in terms of softness there, but it's just, if you have them side by side, you can see the more contrasty image also on the Huawei, which is interesting because it's a contrast to what we had, or it's a difference to what we had with the main camera sensors, where we had more contrast on the Vivo actually. So I think here on the ultra wide angle, the Huawei is stronger than the Vivo. Selfies, front-facing camera, we have an interesting decision to warming up the face, raising the shadows on the Huawei. This is always what it does when it detects faces. It's raising up the shadows a bit and warming up the colors a little bit. It makes it pleasant to the eye to look at least for most people. What I really like is the bokeh that both produce. So both have like bokeh balls that they produce, maybe even rounder and better looking on the Vivo, more realistic looking actually, where it is quite interesting that the Huawei has like added maybe a bit too much bokeh balls everywhere, and this warmish up kind of look looks pleasant, but the bokeh looks a bit weird, where the Vivo's bokeh looks a bit better. In terms of detail level, I'm surprised the Huawei is quite soft there and sharpening things up artificially for sure. The Vivo looks more sharp, more detailed actually. And I think even though it has some hot spots there, I think the colors are more natural for sure as well. We take a look at portrait shots. Some will crucify me now. Yes, I take portrait shots also of animals. Still, I refuse not to do it. The Vivo, I had set for some reason the virtual aperture to oblivion, and this is why it looks so horrible there artificially. And the Huawei, I left, I think, the default one, and you can see the Huawei gets the picture more clear, where the Vivo for some reason at its 85mm has like misfocus there. This is something that I noticed, that not only in portrait mode, but when you have moving subject, the Vivo might be a bit slower there with the autofocus and really nailing the subject that I want to photograph. I noticed that with my dog. I noticed that with my daughter as well. Yeah, and some people say if you don't even take photos of animals, only humans. Yes, not fast moving subjects. My daughter is not running around like crazy, but yeah, it's still something that I noticed there, where I would prefer the Huawei for such shots, especially like animals, for example. Talking about my daughter, here she is. She's not moving so much, especially in the sand or something like this, because she's just a few months walking, and running is something that she's learning right now. So in terms of detail level here or colors, we have warmer look again on the Huawei. You can see it here on the cappy she has on. You can see the warmer whites and here the cooler whites. What I like about the Vivo is that the detail level seems to be a bit higher here. For sure, this was taken with the 85mm again, and this is 54mm, so 2x zoom on the Huawei. It's a bit softer for sure, because I was not using the 3x lens like I should have maybe. So it's a bit softer there all over the frame there. In general, I think the Huawei, when it comes to portraits, you will see it just in a second, has the approach of being a bit softer by default and adding a bit more yellow to faces, where the Vivo tries to sharpen things up, but this not always. This is like the 3x, 3.7x. Keep this in mind. Let's go to another portrait shot where I think, I was photographing Timmy. Timmy was not moving at all, is sitting there. So not a fast moving subject. Both nailed the focus at least. No issues there at all, but you can see that I nailed the focus, maybe not the Vivo X100 Ultra. The Huawei Pura 70 Ultra was clearly focusing on the eye, which I like. You can see also his nose full of details, and the hair has detail. Here I think the back hair has focus and detail, where here it is like going in the autofocus area. The white balance again, warmer colors on the Pura. More contrasty look on the Vivo, not always preferred, I have to say there. So when it comes to portraits and portrait is a mixed bag, I would say, but for animals I would prefer in this case also the Huawei, a bit more warmer look. I don't know, it's like a matter of taste there. The cutouts are good on both there, even the fine hair, Both are doing a fine job. Maybe here a little bit of an error. It's also not perfect here. Slightly maybe overexposed on the Huawei. But the Vivo is just like, because it's not yellow, it's also overexposing there. Maybe not as much as the Huawei is doing there because of the higher contrast that the Vivo in general has. Let's go to portraits of people. This is 2x zoom on both, and we have much more natural colors on the Huawei, where we have much more yellow colors on the Vivo. So what happened here? This is 2x zoom. Apparently they decided to do it like this. The Vivo, however, is much softer here at 2x zoom. It doesn't look bad at all. The Huawei looks a bit, in contrast, over processed here, over sharpened a little bit there. Which one we prefer there? Hard to tell. Really hard to tell. I can just tell you what I like better on the Huawei is that the blue of the sky is visible, where here I don't know what the Vivo is doing with its out of focus area. The blue is gone. It looks a bit of grayish day, different day. And the shadows are a bit harsh on the Vivo, where it's a bit lifted more up here on the Huawei. But the more yellowish kind of face, hard to tell. I would give this point to the Huawei here for the 2x zoom. And this is now interesting because a bit further away, upper body shot with its 85 and 95 millimeter. And here I think we have a slight issue with the Vivo, where I would otherwise expect the Vivo to crush the Huawei. Huawei has its yellowish face again, has a bit of artificial sharpening things up and adding a bit of details there for sure. Maybe the shadows can be lifted up a little bit more there. It's a bit softer otherwise, but the Vivo is completely soft. It's completely as something completely going wrong here with the Vivo. Apparently the algorithms that sharpen the face details up did not work completely. As you can see, my eyebrows are redrawn, but the rest of the face is left unsharp. Pieces of my beard are redrawn and sharpened up. The rest is left unsharp. In my hair, some parts are sharpened up. The rest is like unsharp. The cutouts look very rough there, where the Huawei is definitely doing a better job there. When I step 1-2 steps forward and have a bit more and choose another profile, because the Vivo allows you to choose various different profiles when you go into the portrait mode. Like you have this little magic wand where you can choose various different profiles, and I think I choose, what was it, vintage or crisp, I don't know, textured. I don't know what I was choosing there. I chose another profile there for sure for the portrait mode. Actually, I think there are other options there as well. Yeah, there's like the pre-baked option. There's like looks like a crown kind of symbol, and there you can choose various different ones. And I think I chose there the next 85 millimeter, which is like figure or something like this. I chose there. And first of all, this gives us different colors a little bit on the Vivo, and they can see the different colors there. This is more yellowish, more lifted up shadows, which I like. The Huawei, I have then also this yellowish kind of look, but not so yellowish as the Vivo. Vivo looks a little bit goofy, maybe a little bit more, maybe a bit overexposed. But look at the detail levels. It's crushing now the Huawei in terms of details, and now you can see the superiority of the Vivo X100 Ultra. But it had, first of all, this change. The colors are not perfect on the Vivo, I would say. The face is now almost perfect, I would say. But the color of my shirt, for example, is wrong. It's now blue. The shirt is black. And the other thing is, like, I had to go a bit to the camera for it to detect the face correctly. Huawei has also, it's not completely unsharp, but it has like a bit the softness there and not so much details as the Vivo X100 Ultra has. Maybe the X100 Ultra, some would say it's a bit too sharp, but here I would give the win to the X100 Ultra for sure. And when you zoom in a bit further, this is like the 100 versus 135, the maximum for the portrait modes on both. What we can see is, like, I chose, I think, the size bokeh, and the bokeh balls are going a bit crazy on the Vivo. You can see it, that's artificial. It's nice that they have this, but in the daylight, it looks a bit artificial, especially if it has some issues there still with the depth detecting. Detail levels, very fine, very detailed. You can see it's almost like the Huawei here. You can see very comparable, maybe a slightly bit more details, a slightly bit more sharpening on the Vivo X100 Ultra. But this, keep in mind, the Huawei was at 95. Now it's at 135. And there you can see how soft it is. The Huawei reached its limit. 135 I wouldn't do maybe on the Huawei. I would leave it as 95, and that's it. It's very close to 100. So this is more comparable, I would say. And yeah, overall, yeah, which one is a portrait king? I think Vivo has to still do some work. And overall, when you take a quick snapshot, probably you are more satisfied with the shots that you get from the Huawei. With the Vivo, you have to have a specific distance for it to kick in with its algorithms, and you have to set the correct profile that you want to shoot, so you don't get this like a little bit goofy looking bokeh balls there. And yeah, overall, but like animals and so on, I prefer the Huawei slightly bit better there, even though the Vivo is not far behind. But I think the Vivo misses one, maybe two updates to surpass the Huawei, because the hardware is definitely better there, more capable, and it should be able to produce something better with slight tweaking there of the algorithms of the Vivo X100 Ultra. And yeah, I was on the latest, like today we have the 25th of, actually 26th of July. So yeah, that's it for the daylight shots here. Night video now with the Vivo X100 Ultra. And what do you think about this one here? It's using 4K, I think 24 frames per second if you turn night mode on. Yes, there's a night mode that you can turn on, but it only shows if it's really, really dark, like it's right now, a little moon symbol. And if you click on it, then you get the night mode for video as well. So what do you think about the quality here? And yeah, walking towards some lights there. Now the lights in the background. I turn around here. What do you think about the quality here on the Vivo X100 Ultra? Also, by the way, using the internal mics. And this is now recording with the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra. This is recording 4K 30 frames per second. So however, it has auto FPS. Maybe it is also going down to 24 frames per second. I'm not so sure about this one here. Also using internal mics with the main camera sensor, also 1-inch type. And walking towards the light now. And let me turn around so the lights are in the background. How stabilization, by the way? How is the microphone? Which of them has the better microphone system? What do you think about the Pura 70 Ultra here against the Vivo X100 Ultra? Let's check out the night photos. What we can see here clearly is that even in the night we have the same kind of coloration, like bluish, kind of greenish tones on the Vivo X100 Ultra, and a bit more warmish, yellowish, also a bit greenish tones on the Pura 70 Ultra, and a bit brighter on the Pura 70 Ultra. What you can also see is that the coating on the lens on the Pura is a bit worse than on the Vivo. Vivo looks more cinematic here. Thanks to its good Carl Zeiss coating. And otherwise, when we zoom in, we see both, it's their weakest sensor, but you can see how much more natural the Huawei looks like. It is, of course, a bit of denoising algorithms going on there, but it looks much more natural. And it's sharpening up a bit, but it's not so much dramatically over sharpened and reproduced, almost like an oil painting on the Vivo X100 Ultra. As you can see here, the Vivo has lots and lots of those, like, yeah, artificially sharpened up and some similar, just simply not looking very realistic kind of artifacts there. HDR and details is quite interesting. So the sharpening algorithm is like adding some details in there. As you can see here, HDR is pretty similar to the Huawei. Huawei has a bit of more yellowish hue here to the lights, which is true. This is a little bit too whitish, I think, on the X100, and this is something that I don't like so much. The rest of the picture is almost the same. As you can see, the wider field of view, so you can see a little bit more of the car, the tire, for example, on the Huawei that you don't see on the Vivo. Otherwise, yeah, the lights here a little bit overblown there as well, as you can see here. I prefer the Huawei when it comes to the ultra wide angles, for sure. Even like towards the side, you can see it's a bit brighter there, even though the Vivo seems to have a bit more details here on the brickwork, which is quite interesting. But I think the bricks didn't look like this. I have to check again, but something wrong there. And the lights are warmish here, where here it's a bit colder on the Huawei. Here as well, warmer, here colder. So white balances are also a bit of a difference. I like that the pavement color here and the red color is more true to life, what I saw with my own eyes, where the Vivo seems to be like adding a little bit of details, is I think the sharpening algorithm, but the red color here is a bit off, slightly bit off there. When we come to the telezoom lens, I was expecting the Vivo to destroy the Huawei, but in these challenging situations with the lights like shining directly into the lens, first of all the car and then also of the lights here, the red lights and here the green lights, it is a bit of a challenge for both. It is quite interesting because of course the Vivo has less noise, the Huawei has much more noise and much more processing going on. Look at the signs there, how processed they look like. Both readable, Huawei a bit sharpened up, a bit too sharp, noise all over the place as you can see there, overblown highlights there, here as well, overblown highlights there. It is quite interesting that they are pretty close there, but yes, it is a win for the Vivo. However, when you look at the background there and the colors here, you can also clearly see then where the win for the Vivo happens. So you see the signs are much more readable, much nicer, the colors there, here a bit faded colors, not so nice readable, the HDR a bit losing here, much more details as well. And yeah, the Huawei is thanks to the green light, like everything adding a little bit of green there. The Vivo is doing the same as the Huawei with the background there, with the sky. It's just that you see much more noise on the Huawei than on the Vivo. And in terms of detail levels and so on, you can clearly see much cleaner here, much more noise on the Huawei. So the Vivo is clearly winning there. When I zoom in even further, this becomes very interesting. This is now 10 times zoom on both. They're using digital zoom there. And here I think the Huawei redeems itself. It has a darker exposure in general. And when we take a look at the colors here, you can see that the algorithms, it's still noisier, but the algorithms are a bit better in making the text more readable and sharpen it up. But this has something to it, like for example, you can see that the text is much thinner here than it appears in reality. It's a bit thicker on the Vivo for some reason. And yeah, detail levels and so on, I think the Huawei's algorithms are pretty good also here in reconstructing everything behind the trees, which is quite interesting, but much noisier on the Huawei at 10 times. So like I said, the Huawei has good algorithms there, even though it's tons of noise there, but details are still there at 10x. They are much closer than I thought they would have, should have been. And yeah, it's still a win for Vivo, but it's not at 10 times, not so much as it was in 3 versus 3.7 times. Selfie is quite interesting. We can see again a bit more warmish, now a bit more going to the greenish kind of tone on the Pura, the warmish green, where the colder kind of green, more bluish green on the Vivo. You can see the white balance here on the Vivo. I prefer on the white shirt because it looks white, but a bit more greenish, like darkish greenish, where here it's a bit of warmish greenish going on the Pura, which is fake for sure. It just tries to do it like to make my face look a bit warmer, which I don't prefer there. In this case, in terms of detail levels, I think both on par, but I think the Huawei is a little bit more, like it has a higher resolution, I think, or it's a bit cropped in a little bit more. I think it's a little bit better there in this regards, but it's a very dark kind of picture there. It's very hard to tell. I would like to say they're equally good or bad in this regards. It's just a matter of taste. If you like the colors of the Huawei better than the Pura, than the Vivo. The Vivo I like in this case a bit better. Also the bokeh is very nice on the Vivo. I think this is now working with the bokeh balls there, where the Huawei also has nice bokeh balls there and overall a little bit brighter exposure. But yeah, the more dramatic view is definitely on the Vivo. Is the Vivo winning in terms of selfies, however? Let's take a look at the low light selfie and taking the native resolution, because this is like portrait first of all, and I zoomed in 1x because I have to zoom in 1x, otherwise I cannot take portrait shots on the Huawei. But it's a crop from the ultra wide angle that you can see here right now in normal photo mode, 0.8 times on the Huawei, and this is now yeah, the only one that I have on the Vivo. And there you can see in this lower light situation selfies how much processing Vivo is applying there to the faces, where the Huawei keeps it more real. And here's where Huawei is really winning in terms of points. Yes, at total darkness, Vivo might be even better because the exposure is better there. The white balance is a bit better. But when it comes to every day-to-day shots, I think the selfies, the Huawei, you get a bit of a better shot. Still, even with a wider angle where you can get more in, but it's more natural looking, not also over sharpened and over processed as the Vivo X100 Ultra is looking. And you have the flexibility, plus that you have this ultra wide angle you can crop in. If I crop in a little bit further, you can see it's like almost the same. But if I crop in even slightly bit, you can see, yes, it's a bit softer, but much more natural. This is just simply a little bit over the top on the Vivo, I would say. It's just, some could argue, yes, the Vivo is sharper, yes, but it's like this over processing, and it's not. Here I can crop in, I can take parts of the shot, and it still looks natural. Here if I crop in and take part of the shot, it is simply looking too much processed, in my opinion. But you be the judge. You can write it down in the comment section. For me, I think the selfie is a win for the Huawei at the end. And no, it's not that I want Huawei to win. No, it's just simply my opinion here in this case. Main camera sensor, this is 23, this is it 23 or 24, 23 millimeters, this is 27 millimeters of the same kind of spot. And here I have to say, it's a matter again of taste. You can see warmer colors on the Huawei, you can see greener, bluish kind of colors, hues, colder colors on the Vivo. When you take a look at the detail levels, they're pretty similar. It's both using 1-inch type sensors. This one is a newer sensor, this one is the older sensor, but the processing on Huawei is good. And the processing on Vivo is also good in terms of detail levels. You can clearly see that both are very fine. I think the Vivo is tending towards a bit more sharpening there, that's what the Huawei is not doing so much. And even going to the edges, you can see here it's wider because of the 23 millimeters. We have nice details on the Vivo. Also the trees have lots and lots of details. Which would you prefer? In my opinion, it looks a bit like similar in terms of sharpening, even maybe tiny bit more sharpening on the Vivo. I don't think it's natural sharpness there on the Vivo. I think it's like a bit sharpening up. When you take a look at the white balance and the colors, then I think Vivo has to update a little bit there, because I think Huawei is a bit in front there. You can still see the same that we had with the optimizations of text in the tele sensor. So the Huawei renders this text a bit thinner than what the Vivo is doing. The Vivo is more realistic. The Huawei is a bit more processed. It's looking a bit better on the IDK logo, as you can see there, where the Huawei is like thickening up the text, which makes it more readable. And here the Vivo has, I think, some exposure issues where the text is not clearly readable there. Also here the exposure is better on the Huawei. And this logo is also, it's orange around there. This is a bit too much yellower there. I think the Huawei is doing a better job also on the Teddy logo, where here you can see the individual lights of the logo there. However, the Kick logo is much better on the Vivo, because it is this orangey kind of color, and this is a bit too much yellow there on the Huawei. And the AOK logo, I think the Huawei is winning there, getting the right color. Otherwise, very, very similar. Can you choose a winner there? It's very hard. I cannot. I think they're both equally good in this matter. Then let's take a look at RAW. This is super RAW on the Vivo X100 Ultra. You see how much brighter this is. It's a very large picture. And this is the JPEG of a RAW, the image that I took, because I don't have a super RAW here on the Huawei. Nevertheless, you can see that the Huawei is like overexposing already. So the RAW, the super RAW, is like having HDR on the Vivo X100 Ultra, which is quite nice. Not so much noise, which is like interesting. Even the JPEG here on the Huawei has a bit of noise going on, and has to denoise heavily. You can see how much like stuttery it is when I'm like scrolling around there. The detail level also is fantastic on the Vivo. So if you want to have fantastic photos that you can use for processing, even better than maybe with the main camera sensor and JPEG, use the super RAW option. It's simply that good. You have to wait a few seconds for it to take the shot, but it's fantastic what you get as a result. In comparison, let's see this and just compare the normal RAW. This is the normal RAW on the Vivo, and now it's compared with the normal RAW on the Huawei. You can see, it looks almost the same. Interesting enough, Huawei has, when you take a normal RAW shot, then again also the 23 millimeters, the same field of view as the Vivo here. This is why it's zooming out a little bit. You can see this is 27 millimeter JPEG, and this is the RAW file. You can see it's getting a bit darker as well, and when we zoom in, we can see that both are almost similar when it comes to detail and noise levels. There is a warmer kind of color tone overall in the Huawei, where the Vivo has a bit more bluish tones, cooler tones for sure. When it comes to overblowing highlights, both are doing this. The Huawei a little bit more here on the red light, and the red light appears to be a bit more yellowish. Exactly also with the red light here, because this should be red. Here it appears to be a bit more red. So this is an issue. You have to correct the color balance, white balance a bit. Yeah, the rest in terms of detail level is almost the same. It's a bit brighter here, but I think it's just because it's a more bluish light. Bluish tones there. A bit brighter here as well. And a bit more color noise there and here on the ground. Very, very similar. This is why I'm telling you it's very, very similar with those sensors here. And not much of a difference, maybe a tiny bit better HDR here on the Huawei, but it might be also the exposure being slightly bit tuned down and here a bit up on the Vivo. So what do you think about the night pictures? I think the ultra wide angle is a win for the Huawei. The main camera sensor is high. The tele is a win for the Vivo, and the selfie is at completely dark night situations, it's a win for the Vivo for the colors only. If you get low light, then I think the Huawei is winning here. And yeah, I think the flexibility also of the Huawei with the selfie cam is a bit better. But yeah, if you are in total darkness, definitely the Vivo gets you better colors. Let's take another look at selfie shots with the front-facing camera on both, just to tell you and show you which one is better in especially dim lit situation. And another shot here with a little bit of light going on, and what you can clearly see is here a bit more yellowish kind of tone. This is what the Huawei always does, it gives a bit of warmth to the face. Also the Huawei has some issues, I think, with the cutout there. But the Vivo even worse, I would say. Look at this here, it just cut it out, didn't cut this out. It's like you can see the mask of like blurriness that it put there. It had this headphones in where the Huawei decided to blur this out together with a bit of my hair there. Looks a bit artificial, but when you take a look at the detail levels on my face, this is where the Huawei gets its points, why it's like beating the Vivo in selfie and front-facing camera, and also the Oppo in selfie and front-facing camera. And the only one that comes close to this kind of performance, consistent performance that you get out of the Huawei, is the Honor Magic 6 Pro. So yeah, the Pura 70 Ultra, I think here in front-facing camera territory, is I think beating the X100 Ultra, even though in daylight the X100 Ultra has lots and lots of details and over sharpening and over processing that some people might prefer. But I'm giving the points here, not you, so I'm giving the Huawei here the win, because it's just looking a bit more natural, because there's like a small line between having something over sharpened, too much processed looking, like I think the Vivo looks like on the front facing camera, and something that is a little bit processed, a little bit sharpened up, but still looking more natural. And this is what the Huawei in my case I think is doing here. It could be a bit more detailed here and there, but nevertheless I think the processing is better on the Huawei, and this is why the Huawei is giving or getting more points here for the selfie cam. Otherwise the performance is almost identical. It's really nitpicking here. I have to nitpick to give it a score. Both are very, very good here, but the more consistent results also I get with the Pura and not with the X100 Ultra. Let's come to the conclusion. TLDR, the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra gets 4.510 points, where the Vivo X100 Ultra still number one ranked here in my ranking system, 4.535 points. Let's go into details. First of all, the main photo quality is basically the same, 4.8 points. Yes, you get a little bit more natural colors with the Vivo using the Zeiss natural mode, but not always. Sometimes the colors are a bit too cool, where especially in the hot summer days, the Huawei's mode, the original colors mode, the X-Image that they're using there, is doing a better job. But nevertheless, it equals itself out in terms of detail levels and so on. Sometimes the Huawei gets a bit more things right, sometimes the Vivo gets a bit more things right. Ultra wide angle, the weakest of the sensors on the Vivo, I think still needs a little bit of work. It's a bit soft all over the frame. Sometimes has weird colors, has a bit of issues here and there, where the Huawei still also has a weaker ultra wide angle, but it's still sharper than the Vivo. Then when it comes to zoom camera photo quality, it is a win for the Vivo. We have the large sensor that especially at night is working wonders there when it comes to 3.7 times zoom. The Huawei with 3.5 times at daylight, it is astonishing that at 3.5 times it can keep up, but when you zoom in, start to zoom in to beyond 5 times, like 10 times then and beyond, then the Vivo is for sure winning this match here. Even though at night the Huawei with a little bit better processing can strike back when it comes to HDR, colors and lights, but the Vivo is the clear winner here, king supreme when it comes to the telephoto camera. No one else can touch it right now. Video recording quality is a very hard race there between those two, but ultimately the Vivo X100 Ultra is slightly better than the Huawei Pura 70 Ultra because we have the better ultra wide angle video. You saw that the ultra wide angle video is not so good on the Pura, sadly. The Vivo much better there. The colors are a bit too punchy for my liking on the Vivo. This is something where the Vivo could maybe improve. Autofocus performance is good on both. No difference basically that I saw there. It is not on the level as the Sony Xperia devices, but it's very equal when it comes to getting autofocus. Also, it's not distracted by lights most of the time. Front-facing camera is a win for the Huawei. I showed you some samples. I did a few other samples there. It mainly boils down to the Vivo having some issues with over-sharpening that I don't like so much. It's a bit too over-processed looking. The face is too artificial looking. This might be a matter of taste. Some say it is looking more detailed, but what you don't get is the pleasant colors. That sometimes they are just too off. And especially the portrait effect on the front-facing camera is way too often inconsistent. And this is what is killing the Vivo right now. The Huawei much more consistent there and much more flexible with its ultra-wide angle front-facing camera that allows you to even go to an ultra-wide angle for group selfies. Very useful. Autofocus on both, which is quite nice. And I think, both equally good or bad when it comes to acquiring focus. Camera UI is no match. The Huawei is losing against the Vivo. Vivo has the better camera UI for almost everything there. Lots and lots of features, lots and lots of things there. I think example number one is setting up a timer and disabling the timer. Much easier on Vivo than on the Huawei. And when it comes to extra features, of course, the Vivo also winning there with tons of extra features like the video mode, where it is winning also because it has more features, like in the Pro mode, for example, 24 frames, 25, 50 frames even, which is something that is very rare and I think unique on the smartphone market to have this European PAL standard frame rates there available, as well as cinematic portrait with LUT support, which is very unique as well for the Vivo, where the Huawei cannot compete. So yeah, these are the results. Let's take a look at the ranking where we have those. I told you already the Vivo is on number 1, as you can see here, together with the Oppo Find X7 Ultra still. So what should the Vivo do to beat the Oppo? Actually, it doesn't have to beat, but to be clear number 1. The ultra wide angle needs a little bit of better processing. I don't think they can do it, but what they could do is video recording quality. So get the colors right, not so much punchy colors there. Add a little better stabilization, especially for the front-facing camera, and voila, you get a score that is above that of the Oppo. Autofocus performance is something that they cannot really do much. I think front-facing camera they can do much. They can also beat maybe the Find X7 Ultra, get the processing done right, not so over-processed. Look at what is Oppo doing there. Look at what Huawei is doing. It is doing some stuff on the face, but it's more natural looking, not so much over-processed looking. Get the portrait effect right, because the portrait effect is failing too much on the Vivo. It's inconsistent sometimes with what it does, and the cutouts are not very great. If you get this right, then already you're number one, then the sole number one, so beating also the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. And yeah, what can Huawei do to get a better score? I think it's a bit hard. Video recording quality is one point that they also can improve. I think the red color face issue, the ultra wide angle that has some really weird colors sometimes with HDR, I think they can fix for sure. And front facing camera is already top notch. Camera UI is what they can improve upon. I think this is what they major things they can improve there on the camera UI. They did an overhaul already that boosted that points there, but I think they could improve it even further and get some extra features in Pro Mode, for example, like for video recording, like 24, 25 frames per second. LUT support maybe, that could be also possible. They could add via software update there as well. I'm not so sure they will do it, but it is definitely something they could do. So this is everything for this video. What do you think about this ranking here? So I didn't change anything. It's the same ranking as before, as you see here. There will be, of course, another comparison, Oppo's Master Mode against Vivo's Humanistic, first of all, size natural, and then Humanistic mode there as well. Pretty soon, and maybe the ranking will change there. I'm not so sure, because it's like an extra feature, I would say. It's not something where I would see so much of a difference between those two. But that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have some questions, if you have some opinion, write it down in the comment section. Until the next time.